All right.
Okay. Rolling.
Rolling? Good to go? Okay. Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of Snacks and Chats 2020. I'm Lani.
I'm Ben.
And we have Kai Don't Blink Carter France. I love that name. The Don't Blink. Also, your actual name too.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here. Thanks for reaching out and connecting.
So you're currently getting ready to fight in the Auckland Fight Night. We will get to that soon. But first I want to ask you what we ask all of our guests, which is when people ask you where you're from, what do you tell them?
Where I'm from, obviously say I'm from New Zealand. I am Maori, so if they're from that background as well, I do say I'm from Waikato. That's where all my family's from. But I'm born and raised in Auckland, so yeah, this is home for me.
And so tell me, as someone born and raised in Auckland, how do you get into the fight game? How does that become a reality for you?
Yeah, so my story is, I guess, pretty unique because I didn't pick martial arts. You know, this lifestyle kind of chose me.
Nice.
It's funny how cliche that sounds, but I feel like it is pretty fitting. So I used to get bullied a lot in high school, so I was always small for my size. You know, starting off, I went to Mount Albert Grammar, went there for soccer, so I was trying to make it as a footballer. That was the school where you had to be. There's a lot of sporting or sportsmen in every code, rugby, netball, soccer. So if I knew I was going to thrive in something, it would be there. So I didn't do martial arts when I first went to Mount Albert Grammar. But yeah, third form, used to get bullied. Got so bad that I didn't end up going back to school. And my mum saw the bruises on me, and she said, you don't need to go back if you don't want to. And I didn't want to, snitch on all the bullies, so I had to write a letter. And then we had a meeting with like the dean and stuff. So like the worst thing you can do when you're just starting out high school, trying to kind of find out where you fit in, and now like you're kind of snitching on people and telling them off. And that's when my parents got me down to the local martial arts gym just to kind of install confidence in myself. Obviously to learn how to defend myself. But I wasn't doing it for those kind of reasons. I was doing it to kind of learn more about the philosophy of martial arts, which is, honor, respect, discipline, the way you hold yourself. And then, I just got more involved with the sport. So I didn't get bullied anymore, but I didn't have to use the martial arts. It was just more for myself. And then I had my first kind of amateur fight when I was about 15. I lost. But I knew the journey and the process just to get into the ring that I'd already grown so much as a person that's what was appealing to me, and that's what I feel like hooked me for life. I was like, I just want to keep chasing that feeling. So then I had a few more fights. I won the rest of them, and then I had my professional debut when I was 17, my last year of high school. So I remember having an exam the next day. This was down at, the fight was down at the YMCA in the city on Pitt Street. So all my friends and family came to that. Obviously they were all pretty scared and nervous for me, but I'd been training hard for that fight. Ended up fighting this guy that was a few years older than me. Still in high school, this guy's a grown man. Ended up getting a head kick knockout first round.
Wow.
And once I got my first kind of highlight reel in my debut, jumped up on top of the cage and saw everyone cheering me on, and I was like, okay, this is what I definitely want to be doing. So after high school, I went to university, was studying, what was I doing? Bachelor in Arts at Auckland Uni. But I was like, this is too much workload for me. My head wasn't in it. So like everyone else, I just wanted to change to something that was more suitable for me. So I changed to a Bachelor in Sport at Unitec. And then this viral video went out for a gym in Thailand called Tiger Muay Thai. They were advertising scholarships for their gym. So they were giving out 5. So what they were giving out was free accommodation, free food, and free training for a whole year. So, I was a struggling student at uni. My head wasn't in it. So I was like, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go give this a try. So I told my parents, I'm going to drop out of uni. All of them have gone to university. My brother's a lawyer, my dad's a lawyer. My other older brother's a sports journalist and stuff. So, my whole family is academic, and I was kind of the dark horse, and I wasn't doing the path that they chose. So they supported me because I was passionate, and at a young age they knew whatever I was going to do, if I committed to it, I would get to where I want to be. And my goal was always to get into the UFC. Even when I was getting bullied, I knew the UFC back then, but I didn't know too much about it. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. So, I told my parents I want to go to Thailand. I went on a one-way ticket. So the tryouts were over 2 days. So we did like a wrestling workout, conditioning, like a kickboxing session, and then this big run up this massive hill. I'd never done it before, but the guy that ended up winning, he had done it a few times, so that's the reason why he won. Over the 2 days, there was about 30 people selected from around the world, and they gave out 5 spots. So I was the youngest by like 10 years. I wasn't the most talented, I wasn't the most gifted, didn't have the most experience, but I was the hungriest in the room. And I feel like that has got me to where I am now. I've always kind of been a hard worker, and I feel like that's been installed from a young age from my parents. I guess that's rubbed off on me. So I ended up winning the scholarship, and I was living out there for about 4 years. So based in Thailand, but I was fighting around Asia. So I was training, fought in about 13 different countries around Asia. So pretty much every second month I would fight in another country, injured or not. I had to do it because I had to leave the country for a visa on.
Right.
Because I still wasn't making the best money, so like I had to make do what I had, and just had to travel as much as I could, get as much experience, and kind of soak in all the knowledge that I was learning at the gym, being in Thailand, where Muay Thai is the national sport. So it's kind of like New Zealand with rugby. Everyone does it. If you're going to learn from the best, you might as well learn from someone that's been doing it from such a young age. So I met a lot of amazing people from all around the world. Thailand's quite unique because it's a massive hub of. It's close to everywhere. So people from Russia, America, England, Europe, especially from Australia as well. So you connect, and that's most of the times I was managing myself. So I just meet people, and then they'll be like, "Hey, I need a fighter," or "Can you fight on this card in this country?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, sweet, let's make it happen." So that's that's mostly how I got my fights, just through kind of word of mouth, and I fought in some crazy places while I was in Thailand. Fought on a cruise ship in Phuket. Coming from Malaysia to Phuket, we flew to Malaysia, and then overnight came back on the boat. The boat was docked at a port, so I wasn't moving when we were fighting. Ended up winning by 12-second knockout against a Filipino. Fought in Taiwan. I've got a good track record there. I won by a 9-second knockout, so the first punch pretty much knocked him out. I fought in Indonesia, in the mainland Indonesia. It was called Bandung or something. Like that place was crazy because I'm pretty sure I was fighting in front of some ISIS military group. They brought me in to fight their hometown guy, the favorite, and they didn't realize that I was the one coming in to to do the beating. But it was crazy, and Dan was cornering me for half of these fights as well. Dan Hooker.
Oh, so was he based in Thailand with you?
Yeah. So when I made the move, I was there for a year by myself, and then he was like, "Oh, I want to come over and train where you're training," and then he ended up getting a scholarship as well. So it was cool that we started together at our local gym in New Zealand, but then we just kind of stayed connected. So even Brad Riddell as well, he now in the UFC, was training with us in Thailand. So it's crazy to see how far we've come and what we've had to do to get to the level where we're at now. It's funny how things happen in full circle. We had to go overseas to see is the grass greener. And we realised, you know, we've actually got everything in New Zealand. We don't need to do what we've been doing, you know, travel and obtain all these knowledge and bypass all these systems that people have been using, and we made our own system. So that's awesome to be able to do that and bring it back to the gym and I guess help the next generation with a blueprint of how to get to where we are without the stuff that you don't need.
Yeah, do you think that you could have, do you think that people now, because of what you've done, would they be able to base themselves in New Zealand now, do you think, or would they still need to go overseas, perhaps base themselves in Thailand for a few years? Is that still something that would be necessary, do you think?
It is and it isn't. Like, the thing that I feel like was best for me, I was really shy growing up, so not only for my career-wise, but just to get me out of my shell and out of my comfort zone. You know, nothing worth doing ever comes from your comfort zone. So you have to, well, if you don't make friends in another country, or if you don't force yourself to meet new people, then you're going to be by yourself. And that's what really kind of, I guess, got me connecting with people, and then that's how you grow as a person. So it was probably one of the best things I ever did, was go traveling on my own and follow my passion. And not all the time I was winning these fights. People don't realize that the track record, the journey you take in this fight game, it ain't all about belts and winning titles and the money. There's a lot of hardship that goes with that. So at one point I was on a 3-fight lose streak, fighting good guys, but just for some reason not putting it all together. My parents and my brothers were kind of sick of me asking for money, because at that time I wasn't making obviously things were taken care of in Thailand and stuff, but after a while they're not gonna be as supportive of your choices when you're depending on them for just the means of living. So like at one point I was on a 3-fight lose streak. I was running out of money. I had already done 3.5 years in Thailand, so I'd given it a good stint of like seeing how far I could push it, but they were saying, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe come back to uni and come back home and maybe try something else. And that really hit me when I was like, I got myself into this. I need to make a promise to myself, if I'm going to give it one last good go, I have to put everything into it. So from that point, that day, I just trained for about 3 months straight. I didn't fight. I just trained. A lot of pressure on me, because this is pretty much make or break. And then after that 3 months, I got a fight. I dropped down a weight class as well. So I wasn't fighting at 61 anymore. I was fighting at Flyweight, 57. So that's pretty light. So I knew I wouldn't have the height disadvantage anymore, which I was having at my at the higher weight class at 61. So then I took a fight in Taiwan, and that's when I got that 9-second knockout. And then 2 weeks after I fought on the cruise ship, that's when I got the 12-second knockout. So in the space of like a month, I'd turned my whole career around. And then I ended up getting on a 5-fight win streak, all by first round knockout. And then I got picked up on the Ultimate Fighter in Las Vegas. So it's funny how things kind of work out when you're kind of desperate and you need things to happen. You just kind of pull it out of the bag and you make things work. So I'm glad I kind of stuck to my promise to myself, and I stayed at it, because it just reminds you of that picture of the guy with the picket axe. He's searching for diamonds, and there's one guy that's just about to hit it, and then he gives it up, and then there's the other guy just chipping away, and then eventually gets to that to the diamonds. So that's kind of how my martial arts career has kind of panned out after that 5-fight win streak. Got on Ultimate Fighter, got the only knockout on the season in front of Dana White. It was, I think, 30 seconds I got a knockout, and I didn't get picked up after the Ultimate Fighter. That's when I went to Japan and fought on one of their big promotions over there. It's called Risen. So I lost that fight, which wasn't detrimental to my career, but it definitely was a setback, because people had high expectations, especially coming off the Ultimate Fighter, and
because people expected you to be picked up then, right?
Exactly,
especially with a 30-second knockout, which as I understand it, is quite rare in the flyweight to be knocking people out.
Exactly.
Right?
That kind of separated me from, I guess, the cookie cut of like a flyweight. Usually it's just more like technique and using speed, but I was knocking people out. So
there was a bit of excitement.
Yeah, exactly. There was a buzz, and people are like, oh, this guy's Thailand trained, so you know he's lethal. But it really kind of woke me up. Taking that loss in Japan, I got calf kicked so bad that I couldn't stand on my leg. Right from the first or second kick, he landed right on the sweet spot of your calf, and if you've ever been kicked in the calf, it hurts. So I had to
I'll take your word for it.
It hurt and I couldn't put a weight on it, so I had to switch stance. This was in front of about 30,000 people in Japan as well. It was crazy. It was like the show that I was fighting on was the new version of Pride. So back in the day there was UFC and there was Pride, so they were both kind of the big promotions back in the day, and then Pride sold to the UFC, but then they came back with a new show called Risen, but the same setup, same stadium, so it was massive to be there and fighting on the same card as all these massive names. But I was young then. This was back in 2016. I was still maturing as a fighter, and I learned a hard lesson that night. You got to check kicks, otherwise it's gonna hurt the rest of the fight. So yeah, after that I chose to come back to New Zealand. I feel like I was getting a bit too comfortable in Thailand.
Yeah.
I was there for so long that you get into your little routines and you forget that you're there for work. Since Thailand's such a holiday destination, you start to not be accountable. And our gym was so big, we had so many fighters that you kind of get lost as a number. So I needed to get a head coach or go back to my head coach that was kind of keep me back on track and tell it as it is and kind of just be on my case. So that's why when I came back to New Zealand, I started training with Eugene Beerman at City Kickboxing.
Had you been with him before you
I
left
wasn't
Thailand?
with him, no. We'd done a few trainings together, but I was with another gym in West Auckland. That's where me and
where Dan was originally from.
Me and Dan were both from that staple. So yeah, I came back and started training with Eugene, and I sat down with him and I said, how am I going to get my UFC career back on track? And I remember what he said. He said, just turn up to training and the rest will take care of itself. So
when you heard that, what did you think? Did you believe that?
Yeah, I like the thing with Eugene, he's very selfless, and he'll tell you, you might not want to hear it, but you need to hear it. He'll just give you the honest truth, and he'll just tell you how it is. And he just said, you just need to train more. And that's what I did. So I just turned up to training every day. I trusted the system that he had into play. And after that fight in Japan, I fought, I think 3 months later in Melbourne, and I ended up knocking out their hometown guy in the third round on a week's notice. And then got on a 5-fight win streak fighting around Asia. So I was training out of CKB, at City Kickboxing, and then ended up getting picked up for the UFC eventually. It took about 2 years outside after that loss. So it took a while. I was getting a bit impatient. I was like, why isn't it happening? Why am I not getting picked up? And they're like, the division is a bit on the rocks right now. They don't really know what they're doing with it.
Yeah, because when you came in, there was worry that Dana might just do away with that division as well, right? So that
was in the back of my mind, and I was like, I haven't even fought yet, and they were already thinking about scrapping this division. It's like, come on, give me a break. So it's every time I fought in the UFC, it was always, I never really thought about the things I couldn't control. I was just like, I'm here to fight, I'm here to do my job, I've got a fight booked, so I'm just focusing on that. Then
oh, sorry. No, you continue.
Oh, so I was just going to say, when I made my UFC debut in Adelaide 2016 in December, it was a big, everyone knows that I'm Israel and Dan's teammate. So there was a lot of pressure coming into that fight, but, I had about 50 friends and family fly over for that. And then ended up getting fight of the night, so I got a 50K bonus on my first UFC fight. So from what I've come from struggling in Thailand, not knowing when the next paycheck's coming in, to not knowing if I'm going to fight in the UFC, to getting rewarded with a bonus, it was kind of just like, okay, I'm so glad I stuck to what I was going to do, and I've reached it never stops, but to get to that moment, it was nice to kind of sit back and kind of reflect on how far I've come. So now, this year has been a pretty active year for me. I fought 3 times this year, which is, pretty busy. So I've kind of just built off each fight. So I didn't win my last fight in December. It was one of the biggest cards of the year, but we had a good reception. I was fighting number 5 in the world. I'm number 6. If a few things went differently, it would have gone my way. So I can't really take it to heart. It's just one of those things when you're fighting the best in the world. It's just a game of inches, and there's only one winner. So I'm not going to dwell on it. And it's awesome that I've got another fight coming up in 7 weeks for UFC Auckland. So we're just going to use that as momentum and build off that. So it's kind of nice knowing that I know how to pick myself up coming off a loss. I know what it takes to get back in that winning column. So we're just going to do what we've been doing, and that's just keep our head down and work towards the next guy.
Where do you think that comes from, knowing how to pick yourself up from a loss? Is that because of all your experience from Thailand, from so much fighting, from all those years of wins and losses as well? Or is that something deeper that you learned as part of your childhood and bullying and all that kind of stuff? Like, where does that resolve come from?
I feel like it's a combination of everything. Life is hard, but it's the ones that can get through adversity and keep moving forward are the ones that eventually get to their goals and reach them. So it's something that I've learned at a young age, just to kind of always find a way to make it work. And that's from Eugene as well. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have a mentor like my head coach. This year he's been 2019 he was coach of the year, so the best coach in the world, having 2 world titles at our gym, and the track record that we've been having, 11-1 last year for 2019 in the UFC. So that just reassures me that what we are doing is elite level. So if we can compete, and we've got 2 world champions from such a small country. I know Alexander Volkanovski is Australian, but he is one of the boys from our gym at City Kickboxing, and having Israel as a middleweight world champion, me and Dan are both top 10 in the world. It's just a great place to be, and that there's that term, iron sharpens iron. That definitely is what's happening here. It's just when the tide rises, all the ship rises together. So that's the reason why all the boys have been doing so well. Got all the sayings. This ain't my first radio. But it's a great place to be, and that's what kind of doesn't. I don't fill myself up with negativity or too hard on myself, because I know that things will get better. I just need to adjust a few things, learn from my lessons. The losses, you always got to learn from them. You can't take it as you're not good enough or anything like that. It's just, that's the fight game. If you don't know how to lose, you don't know how to win. So if you're not going to put yourself in that position, then why do it at all? So it's a lifestyle kind of thing, but I'm in this sport for the long haul. So it's one of those things you just got to just keep moving forward and on to the next. So that's what we've got going, and what a better place to do it in my hometown, UFC Auckland, February 23rd, Spark Arena. I drive past it all the time, in front of my friends and family. I think it fits about 15,000. So this has always been my dream. Fighting in Vegas was awesome. Fighting in Australia, fighting in Japan, but fighting in my hometown, that's always been the bucket list for me. Just kind of picturing it now. Every time I go to bed, I visualize, what it's going to be like, having the New Zealand flag draped around my neck, just visualizing all these little details that eventually it's going to come into reality. So, I can't wait.
I was going to say, winning's nice, but it's always the losing where you learn the most, right? So what did you learn from your last fight, and what new are you taking into this next fight?
New year, new me. Nah. Now, the things I did learn in that last fight, my camp wasn't the best for my last fight. You know, people just seeing the end result, which is you stepping in the octagon, but it takes so much just to get to there. I was faced with a lot of adversity, just things like, you know, life gets in the way sometimes, but if you're a true professional and this is your craft, you just have to make it work and make it look like nothing's wrong. And that's what I had to kind of do. Injuries, you know, being run down, people passing away, all these things kind of add up. So I kind of just took it as fuel to kind of not take on board, but just to kind of add to the fire. And I just had to kind of be like, you know, this is what it has to do. And I just got to make training for me is like therapy. So every time I step into the gym, it's like I'm resetting. So I'm always filtering out what's happening around me. And the gym is a way that I have a clear head and I know exactly what I need to do and pretty much gives me purpose. So leading into these fight camps, you know, you're pushing your body, especially for this, or every fight you're going to be pushing your body, but there was so much online that, you know, I was coming into this fight on an 8-fight win streak, ranked number 6 in the world. I was fighting number 5 and my teammate's fighting for a world title. So he's pushing for 5 rounds. So me and him were training together for about 10 weeks leading up to this fight in Las Vegas. 3 title fights on this card, so biggest card of the year pretty much. So I knew what was on the line. So I just had to keep turning up to training and keep kind of pushing as hard as I could, even though things are happening around me that I can't control. So just getting there, making weight was hard for this fight. So I don't walk around my weight class. I walk around about 68, 69 kgs.
Shit.
And I fight about 57. So it's about 10 kgs I cut in about 10 weeks.
Hence the snacks.
Yeah.
Healthy snacks.
These are the healthiest snacks we've ever had on Sticks.
My nutritionist will be happy. So I work with a guy called Geordie. He's or the fight dietitian is his name on Instagram. He's based out of Brisbane. So he's been in my circle since the start of my UFC career. So, you know, when I was living in Thailand, you're kind of trialing and error things that work and don't work, and you it's nice to have someone that's professional and guide you. And nutrition is such a big part of fighting that I just wanted to take that stress away. So that's why I got this guy on board, and he works with all the UFC fighters from this region. And he's the reason why I can make weight pretty comfortably now and I guess perform like I do, because making weight is half the battle, and then refueling it and then performing the next night, that's where if you're doing all the right things, that's when it will show. But for this fight, just things went me being a bit stressed, I guess, and I wasn't sleeping as well. So having these things, it's all a balance and they're all intertwined. So if these things aren't working, that means your weight's not going to be dropping, which means that it's going to be harder for you to perform in training. And then that means you're going to be more run down. So that's when you can get like staph infections, which is like a bacterial infection, which is common in my sport because you're always rubbing sweat with people, you know. You're always sharing that space, and we clean the gym as it's pretty much like a hospital, like every day, like Dettol, yeah, everything done. But the thing is, when you're run down and on the verge of getting sick, that's when you're more susceptible of catching these kind of things. So you got to jump on antibiotics, and then that's going to be affecting your gut health. So it's all a combination of all these different things, and that's one of the factors that will affect your weight. So coming into fight week, I was at a good weight, but my body was already pretty stressed, and then getting used to the climate in Vegas. It's quite dry heat, which means you're not going to sweat the same as you usually do. So come weigh-in day, I started my weight cut about 5 o'clock in the morning. The weigh-ins were about 9. So I was in the bath for about 3 hours, on and off. So neck height of water, like not boiling, but like hot.
Yeah.
And usually I do about 10 minutes in the bath, and then we jump out, and then I chuck on my sweatsuit with, it's like Abilene, which is... It's kind of like makeup remover. It just opens your pores so you sweat more. So you jump in towels, and then we have about 10 towels over the top of you, and you sit in those towels for about 20 minutes. So it's a bit of a process, but that's how you can drop like weight fast. So I had about 2 kgs to cut weigh-in morning, And then I wasn't losing that weight when I was in those towels, so I had to stay in the bath for 20 minutes, which is, it sucked. But I just had to stay in there, you know. It's one of those things, it's not a matter about missing weight and not hitting the number. It's just about how hard it's going to be. So I was willing to, it's pretty dramatic, but I was willing to die just to make this weight if I had to, you know. But that's the kind of mindset you got to be in just to get ready for the fight, because the weight cut is half the battle. If you can't get through that, then the fight is going to be so much harder. So yeah, I made weight. It wasn't as smooth as I thought it was going to be, but we got there in the end. And then you have 24 hours to rehydrate and refuel and then fight the next day. So the next day I weighed in about 67. So 56.9 I weighed in, and then 24 hours, so 67. So there's a protocol we follow after you weigh in that my nutritionist has got me doing. So like first 2 hours is all just liquid, and then eventually you add in food again to get your body ready to not eat normally, and eventually by the end of the night you're eating normally, and then you're just kind of eating every 2 hours to kind of pack on as much weight as you can. So there's a big system and science behind all of this, and even the weight cut, you know, we're doing so many things that are making sure that my body is working like it should be. You know, he's taking blood pressure tests, he's checking my heart rate constantly. So everything is safe. You know, it's never at a point where it'd be like, okay, you need to go to the hospital. If it got to that point, my nutritionist would already have cut that weight cut and we would have stopped. But that's why you have professionals that know what they're doing and have your safety, have your best safety in mind. So yeah, so that's kind of one of the things I learned going into this fight, and also in the fight, it's one of those things when things aren't going your way, you can't get emotional about it. You just have to block it out, get to that next round, and then start fresh. So
you felt you were getting emotional in that fight? Or?
No, not really. It wasn't about emotion. It was about when you have a game plan and you want to stick to it, and then things aren't going your way, so you have to adapt and change. So it's just about not putting everything into the one game plan. It's about having plan A, plan C, and I was getting caught a bit too much, so my thought process was a bit cloudy. Yep. So like I was thinking I was catching him with things, and it wasn't connecting the best, or like connecting as good as I thought it would be. And then he was just adding up a bit more points than me, and that's eventually how he got the win. So it was real close, neck and neck. One of the two things that went my way, we could have got it, and especially in his region, the judges, I guess, took a liking to him. They scored the taunting and stuff to him, but if it's down in New Zealand or Australia, you know, we wouldn't be scoring it like that. So it's a little bit different. So this time at least the judges will be a bit more welcoming to me. So yeah, it's just one thing you just gotta take on the chin.
I mean, listening to all of that, it just strikes me also how much having your mental health must be like such a big part of it as well. Like if you're not right mentally, then none of that can happen as well, right?
Nah, not at all. Fighting is the most ultimate thing you can ever do, because you're going in there. So this guy's been training just as much as you have, but things happen, you know. Things can change and things happen so quickly that if you're not present and you're not right there at that very time, then you'll get hurt, and you'll get hurt really bad. So it's something that's always taught me. The sport, martial arts, and MMA has taught me, you know, how to be present in that mindset, and that's just through experience as well. You get better at kind of switching and knowing when to turn it on, and when you're in the heat of the moment and you're in a three-round fight and there's no like, oh, what am I doing after this? What's the after party going to be like? Who's going to be there? It's like, this guy's trying to hurt me. Am I going to let him do that, or am I going to take it to him and give it back? So, it's one of the things you definitely need to be able to tap into. But I've been seeing a sports psychologist as well. So it's something that I've only just added into my, I guess, training regime. You know, you train so much physically and you have your nutrition on point, but if you're not doing anything with your mental side, I feel like that's massive advantage if you do have that. So I've been working with this guy called Dave. He's a New Zealand powerlifting champion. He works with a lot of athletes, works with Izzy and a lot of different other fighters as well. So it's awesome to kind of have that professional advice on the kind of mindset and headspace you need to be in, and also venting as well. When you go into these sessions, you kind of just like an open book, and you just kind of let out everything that's been happening, and then you kind of sorts it all together and get you leaving the room always better than before you came in. So I feel like it's extremely important, not just for athletes, but just for every person, just to kind of have that space where you learn tools where you can learn how to de-stress and get rid of being anxious, especially in a high pressure sport and job like mine, where you make a mistake and you're in front of thousands, millions of people watching online. So it's a lot of pressure, and it's only going to get worse. But if you can manage it and kind of welcome it and not shy away, it definitely gets a lot easier. And it's also about not letting other people's emotions and feelings control your own. And that this comes with experience as well. So I'm still learning, I'm still growing as a person and in my career, but like I said at the start, I'm in here for the long haul. So that's why I'm just making sure that I'm doing everything I possibly can to make sure I stick around and make the most money I can, make the biggest name I can for myself, and eventually leave the sport and go down other avenues, which at this very time I'm doing as well. So it's also about setting yourself up, because you can't fight forever. There's a shelf of how long you can do this. I'm 26 now. I've got at least another 5-6 years in me. But martial arts is for a lifestyle. So even though if I'm not fighting, I'll still be involved in somehow, coaching or mentoring or, who knows. But that's, I guess, what's the exciting thing. It never ends.
Yeah, that must be quite interesting for you with your background and how you came up and you were quite shy and you got bullied. Like, do you see kids coming through that are like how you were and you're like, I want to help you?
Yeah, definitely. So that's one of the things I've been doing. I do a bit of guest speaking, like anti-bullying at schools and motivational speaking. So I do meet a lot of kids that I guess come from similar background as me or have a hard upbringing. And I guess I'm not that much older than they are, so when it's coming from a person that's similar age, they can actually listen and I want to get through to them before something else happens. I was recently just in Tahiti helping a friend out with some seminars. So his family owned one of the bus companies that picks up all the kids around the island, and then we had them at his camp for the week. So we trained them twice a day, and then we took them on activities. And these kids don't have much, they grow up on an island, but when they see me, I guess, being there and then giving them attention, then be like, this guy fights in the UFC, what's he doing here? But that just goes to show the world's never too big. You can start from anywhere and make it. So it was awesome being there. Being Maori, it's so crazy how similar Tahitians and Maoris are connected, language and the way they, the mannerisms, the customs they have. And I went to this island that, sorry, I'm going on this tangent, but I went to this island that was crazy. It's called Huahine. So the first boats that came to Aotearoa, they left from this island. So the stories and where they come from is so strong and present to this day that everyone knows exactly how they got there and where they're from. And it was pretty powerful just being there and feeling the mana and the wairo in the air. And the first thing the guy said to me when I landed is like, welcome home, brother. And I've never had that feeling before, feeling of being at home in another country. So that was awesome to kind of go back and reconnect with my tupuna and my ancestors, because I know they would have come from that same path. And yeah, it was amazing. So like you said, I want to do more in my community, especially for the younger generation. I feel like kids these days don't know how to deal with adversity. Things don't go their way. They're too easy to kind of give up and do something else. So martial arts is definitely a massive tool to be able to do that and to work things out and to, I guess, problem solve and like it did for me, gives you confidence. As you grow older, you learn these things. So, I definitely want to get more involved with the community in that regards. But for now, fighting is my priority. So that's my platform, and that's what all my effort is into at the moment. But so many different avenues you can go down on the back end of your career, and I'm looking forward to kind of doing it all in good time.
Some point.
Yeah, all in good time. Yeah.
And how connected are you with your Maori culture here? Like, how much of that was a part of your upbringing, and how much of that, I guess, do you draw on in your day-to-day life?
I was brought up in Auckland most of my life, but all my family's from Hawke's Bay, from Napier. So we did go down. Me and my brother, we do go down quite a lot because my mum still lives down there. My grandfather, Te Aupia Kara, he was one of the kingitangas for the Maori Queen. So he was one of the speakers, and this is why it was pretty surreal for me to go back to Tahiti, because I didn't know this at the time when I was there, but my uncle messaged me and he said, you're following your grandfather's footsteps. He went back to Tahiti in 1989 or something like that, as one of the spokesmen for the Maori Queen. First time any waka had gone back from Aotearoa to Tahiti. He did a karakia, so a prayer on one of the lakes, the sacred lakes, to lift tapu, so lift off, what's it called? Yeah. To lift off any, bad spirits on the lake. And so I was in the same island that he was, the same ocean that he would have been in. And I took that trip on a day's notice as well. So I wasn't even supposed to be there, but for somehow it kind of drew me to be there in that location. So I have grown up on the marae and being around my cousins and seeing the protocols they use and on that side of things. But being in Auckland, I've always kind of not been away from it all, but we've just been always kind of connected through what I do. So all my ancestors would have been fighting, on the battlefield back in the day, with the other tribes, and what I do is kind of like the modern day version of it. So that's why when I make that walk out to the octagon and step inside the ring, I kind of embody all of my ancestors, because I know this is what they would have been doing, hundreds of years ago. So I definitely take that on board, and I know that it's in my blood to fight. I wouldn't have done it if I would have continued if it wasn't. So that definitely gives me strength come fight night. And I'm just kind of blessed in the lifestyle I've chosen, because it's not for everyone. No, not many people can do this as a job, and it definitely is a thinking man's sport, because if you're tough, everyone's tough in the sport. So if that's all you have as your strength, you're not going to make it. You're going to get hurt and you're going to retire pretty quickly. So yeah, to choose this as a lifestyle and to do it as a profession, it's I definitely take it day by day, because I know a lot of people that don't like their jobs and don't like what they're doing, but I love what I do. I love the training side of it. I love the growth that you have in between each fight, in the camps, how much you progress, the people you meet, the way you can travel and do this overseas, and fighting to me is such a massive thing, because you don't need to speak English to understand what it is. So that's why when you walk into a room and no one speaks English, but you can still have a conversation with someone just because they know exactly what you're talking about, or it's an awesome thing to do. So yeah, I'm just enjoying this journey, and I can't wait for what's to come. Cool.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Anything else?
I think we're done.
Cool. Well, I'll say one more thing. Well, the fans I've met in the sport has been awesome, seeing how much support you get, especially being in New Zealand. But Australia, they class you as one of theirs. So if they want to jump on board, I'll do it. If they want to keep buying me free sneakers, they can keep doing that as well.
Oh, so. People buy you free sneakers. I thought you were going to say free drinks, but free sneakers, that's it.
Yeah, they've stepped up their game, eh? So yeah. Auckland, you know.
Auckland fans, you've got to match that at the very least.
Step it up.
Yeah.
No, I can't complain. It's awesome. It's awesome to see the support. Eh?